Overcoming Obstacles, the Right Recipe. Hi, I'm Ann Sullivan, and I am ready to walk you through the second step in my Overcoming Obstacles system. And we're going to look today at the recipe for growth. Now, it's not really a recipe, but it is the start of step 2 in my system, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, remember what we talked about in the last video. We talked about the 3 mistakes. I called them 3 fatal mistakes. They were trying to do too much all at once, pinpoint perfectionism, where you're just lasering down so far you lose sight of the music, and lack of a plan for growth. And we talked about how proper practice resolved that. Now, did you recognize these mistakes? Have you ever done any of them? I know I've done all of them at one time or another. So that was what we talked about getting through in the last video. Now in this video, we're going to talk about what you need for growth and progress. Exactly what you should be practicing, right? Last time we talked about practice itself. Now we're going to talk about what you need to be doing. And that's this video. And in the next video, I'll show you the actual steps that you can take, what you need to put in place so that all this stuff happens. Now, first, you have to remember you need to start practicing the way you must to start playing the way you want. And that's what we're going to get to in that third step. But we have to get to the second step first, right? Remember, this is a system. This is a proven path. This isn't something that I made up. It's something that I discovered and have used. It's something I used to get myself out of some tricky situations, and it's something that I use with my students. Don't tell them, because some of them don't know that this is what I've been doing with them. But the second that they watch this video, it would all come to them and be, oh yeah, I get it now. So it's something that I use every day. And what we're going to do is we're going to work through that recipe for growth. Like any good recipe, it starts with the right ingredients. Now, I don't know about you, but have you ever made a recipe and forgotten something? In my family, the story is famous about the time my mother made chocolate chip cookies, and she got them all into the oven, and right as she closed the oven door and started walking away, she realized she had forgotten to put the flour in the recipe. So she quickly ran back to the oven, opened the door, and stirred a spoonful of flour into every cookie. Now, the cookies came out because she'd stirred the flour back in. But of course, if she hadn't put the flour in, it would have just been this gooey, buttery, chocolatey mess all over the oven. So when you have an ingredient that's missing from your recipe, you're not going to come out with quite the results you anticipated. It's hard when it comes to practice to know if you're really missing something, because really, if you're a student, you don't know what you don't know, right? This is why we have teachers, because teachers can fill in those gaps. They have more knowledge and more experience. And if you don't have that kind of guidance, it's really hard to keep yourself on track, because you know that you're going to miss important things. But I'm going to tell you what the important things are right now. And there are 3 important ingredients in this recipe for growth, and they are technique, musicianship, and repertoire. Now, you'll recognize these as the 3 growth areas that I talk about in the 90-day plan. And what we're going to do today is look at each of those areas, why it's important, and a little bit of what you need to do to get those going in your own practice. Now, technique is kind of the obvious one, right? Technique is the foundation. What your fingers can do is that's the foundation for all the music that you can make, right? And you can only make as much music as your fingers can do. This is a surprising stumbling block. Harp technique is really tricky. And for students, especially students who come to the harp with a musical background on another instrument, their musical knowledge is, way up in the stratosphere, and their harp technique is way down in the basement. So it can take a lot of work to get that technique up to a level where the music they're making is satisfying. So it's really hard, but you really need to build that technique because it's the root of everything that you do. Now, suppose you've been working on your technique for a while, then you probably have discovered that your technique is also your speed limit. You can only play as fast as your fingers can play. So if the piece you want to play goes at lightning speed and you're not used to playing anything beyond a comfortable walking tempo, you need to do some technical work before you can really tackle the piece. Now, the piece might be motivation, and it might be a really great vehicle to help you get there, but your technique is going to limit your speed. On the other hand, if your technique is really facile and well developed, you can play just about anything. Your technique also is always in progress. Take it from somebody who's been doing this for a while. You can't just develop your technique until things seem solid and then put that on the back shelf. It's a matter of continually conditioning your technique so that you can maintain it, so that you can refine it, and so that you can develop it further. Your technique isn't a once and done. It's always in progress. And technique is easy to keep developing, right? I mean, we know what we should be doing. Scales, arpeggios, chords, exercises, etudes, and just simply really paying attention to our technique at least some of the time while we practice. Now, I don't think you have to pay attention to your technique every moment of your practice because there are other things to concern yourself with. Musical aspects, all other kinds of things. But technique is something you need to dedicate some time to on a regular basis. It's an essential skill. Now back to that recipe. Ingredient number 2, musicianship. This is a little bit trickier because it's a little bit harder to define and it's a little bit harder to figure out how to practice. Musicianship is the musician's craft, and it comprises a lot of different things. Things like note reading, rhythmic fluency, theory, expressive tools, music history, anything that has to do with playing music. And so this makes it a really broad topic, and it makes it a little bit harder to practice, but it's so important because all of these things will increase your knowledge and your understanding of what you see on the page, your understanding of what it is that the composer's trying to tell you, or how to create your own music. It will help you learn faster and learn much more easily because you'll have a greater vision and a greater understanding of the music. You'll be able to see those patterns more quickly. And I don't just mean, little 4-finger patterns, the big patterns in music that make it so much easier to sight read and to play quickly and to memorize because you have a larger frame of reference. These are also the skills that make the big 3 much easier, right? These are sort of the big 3 tasks that we need to do, or some of us prefer one to one of the others, but it doesn't matter. They're all important. Sight reading, memorization, and improvisation. All of these 3 skills will show up any weakness you have in your musicianship training, right? If you're not a good note reader, it's going to be hard to sight read. If you don't understand and see the big patterns in music, hear the big patterns in music quickly, memorization is going to be more difficult. It's just going to be a slightly longer process. And if you don't have a basic understanding of theory and harmony and the patterns that you hear, improvisation is going to be more difficult. Now, the good thing about trying to work on these skills is that you only need a little bit of it every day or every time you practice, and you can pretty much incorporate it with any other practice that you're doing. You can always take a difficult passage that you're trying to work on and just practice saying the notes, or practice doing it in different rhythms, or look at the key, look for patterns, pay attention, and if you take 5 minutes every day to think about one of those areas that I did, let's go back. This slide right back here, if you take a look at practicing reading some notes, or playing in different rhythms, or thinking about chord patterns, or working on some manner of expression, everything from dynamics to tone to phrasing to legato. If you think about one of those as you play, as you practice, dedicate 5 minutes to it, you'll be making progress. and you'll be moving right along. So you don't have to take a separate course. You just need to remember to pay attention. Okay, so back to our recipe. And here's our third step, repertoire. Now, repertoire is the easy one, right? It's simply the music that you play. But there's a benefit in studying repertoire just beyond, simply having music to play. When you study repertoire and you have experienced a broad range of repertoire, you develop these 4 things right here that make it easier to learn any new piece. Because if you have a broad enough range of music that you have played, doesn't mean you have to keep it in your repertoire forever, but a broad range of experience with music, it leaves you with a sense of familiarity to a lot of different musical aspects, a lot of different rhythms. For instance, if you'd never played a Latin rhythm, a piece with a Latin rhythm, the first one that you came to would be something of a challenge. You'd have to figure it out. But if you keep experiencing these new things, you have that, familiarity with it, so it makes it easier to learn the next one. There's a facility that comes from playing a broad range of repertoire because you've asked your fingers to do a lot of different kinds of patterns. So it's actually a technical development that comes from this. There's a fluency because so much of this is familiar. So much of it is something at least, that you've done before. Once you've played The Little Fountain, it makes it that much easier to play La Source because the patterns are similar, the idea is similar. And of course, a broad range of repertoire gives you a framework of understanding and a framework of experience for everything else. This is why teachers like to set out a curriculum. We study this piece, then we study this piece, because it creates that range of experience, that depth of experience, and the building on of skills and understanding. So that's one of the things that repertoire study can do for you. And of course, when you study and play a lot of music, you do have music that you can play. And the more music you play through and study, the easier it is to learn new pieces. You can learn those pieces faster. And that helps you enjoy making music even more. What a deal, right? So you've got those 3 ingredients: technique, musicianship, and repertoire. And now all you have to do is measure them out in the right proportion, mix them together, and bake them or practice them, and you get the right results. So let's go back to that recipe. Now this is what I call the basic recipe. And this is pretty much what a normal practice session would look like, where you would spend 1 part of that practice session on your technique, 1 part on musicianship, and 2 parts on repertoire. Now, you don't have to put all of these in 1 practice session. You could spread them over a week. You could even spread it out over a month if that's what you wanted to do. But you're going to be covering all of those things, and you're going to be covering more repertoire than the other things, but you're not going to neglect any one of those. And so that's a good place to start. But what if you have a particular need? Like, what if your technique needs extra work? Well, then let's go with a growth recipe that looks like this, where you take those same 4 parts, and they don't have to be equal, right? I mean, this isn't math class, so you can mix it up the way that works for you. But you're going to double up on your technical study. Still include musicianship, and just maybe back off on your repertoire a little bit while you work on your technique. So this would be a growth recipe. This is one that I use with students, especially in the early stages of learning, where we just have to get them some technical facility before they can really play very much. This is also great if you really want to go back and review your technique. It doesn't keep you from playing music, and it doesn't keep you from moving ahead, but it just gives you extra technical work. Now, on the other hand, maybe you have a performance coming up, and we can do sort of a performance preparation version of the recipe where we cheat a little bit on the technique and musicianship, keep those parts kind of small, and add extra repertoire part so that you can get through all the music that you'd have to get through for your performance. Notice that we're not ignoring any one of those three ingredients, but we're trying to keep them in balance, because not only does that just help you keep all those skills in play and keep everything growing, but it also gives you a little bit of relief from the stress of just playing that same music over and over. You get to concentrate on some other things. Keep your hands in shape, keep your brain and your understanding in shape while you're working on that music. So that might be a version of a performance preparation recipe. But the recipe that's most important is your recipe. Those recipes can change. You're always going to have those three components: technique, musicianship, and repertoire. But the way you mix them is up to you. It's dependent on your own situation, what you need right now. And so you can create that recipe that is yours just by using those three ingredients. Now, two of those ingredients, technique and musicianship, they're part of step 2 of my system. They are the essential skills, because when you keep your technique developing and your musicianship developing, you are growing as a musician. And this is why this is step 2 in my system. This is what you need to practice. Those two skills, if you are practicing these every time you practice, or over the course of a week or something as you practice, you will develop the foundation of security and understanding that you need. It's always deepening. It's always growing. It will get stronger the longer you work at these two things. And you can see that that is going to provide a focus for your practice and a way to play more music better. So there's the security and the understanding. Those two skills together also are your foundation for playing music proficiently and expressively. So you'll be able to play it securely and confidently and fluently and fluidly and beautifully, all those things. And the stronger your foundation is, the more challenging the music that you can play. So back to my system. That first step, proper practice. Second step, essential skills. Remember, proper practice is that combination of managing your time and your focus and your priorities. And that's how you're going to put your practice together so that it's directed toward a particular goal and directed toward exactly how you're going to meet that goal. Your time is managed, all that good stuff. That's proper practice. Then you be sure that in that practice you include work on those essential skills, technique and musicianship. If you've just been playing your nice pieces, then you're missing out on some of the power of practice. So this is something you need to include because it's your foundation for playing any kind of music. Now, perhaps you're wondering how these may help, how these are going to help you overcome those obstacles and find the progress that you're looking for, play the music that you want. And that's where my third step comes in. And the third step has to do with implementation. I'm going to walk you through this in the next video, and we're going to put these first two pieces together, put all 3 steps of the system together. But before we can do that, I need you to do some homework. Yes, I'm giving you homework. Woohoo! First of all, before you watch that third video, I want you to list 3 pieces that you never finished but think you could have. You know, those pieces where you worked on them and maybe you worked on it for a very long time and then you just put it away and you never quite got it to where you wanted it. It was close, but not quite there. I'm sure you have at least one of those. See if you can list 3 of them. And extra bonus, extra credit here, if you can give a reason why you think you didn't finish it. Maybe it was just too hard for you at the time. Maybe it was too long. Maybe your technique wasn't developed enough. Maybe you just got tired of it because you just couldn't seem to get it any better. So see if you can list 3 of those pieces. And then when you've got that done, be sure to print out and have those 90-day goal pages in front of you because you're going to want them as we go through the next video. What I would like you to leave that video with, what I want to help you with on that next video is to put together that 90-day plan for yourself so that you can see how one of those plans would work. I'll put together a sample plan and you can edit it for yourself, but you'll have that plan together. And that's what we're going to do in the third video. Okay? So get to your homework, and I'll see you there.